works also in Milwaukee with the Greater Milwaukee Education Trust, an organization that I'm familiar with that works with businesses partnering with education. So he is a very distinguished guest, and I would please ask you to help me welcome Dr. Howard Phillips.
I want to thank each one of you for being here because I understand it's voluntary. I really appreciate that. I'm here for a couple of reasons. One is Brenda was kind enough to invite me, but I have great respect for your superintendent, Dr. Rose Smith. She and I have gotten to know each other, quite well over the last couple of years. Actually, not so much being superintendents together in Wisconsin as much as being involved in the superintendent's program sponsored by the Danforth Foundation. And so I have a lot of, respect for her. And I want to tell you that I looked at the statistics for Beloit, and I really think that you all ought to be proud of what you're doing as educators for kids here in Beloit. But I think it's also a very good time to talk about change. And that's sort of what I'm about. I think the time to really talk about change is when you think you're doing well. It's better to talk about it at that point than it is when you're on your way down. That seems to be counterintuitive, but actually a lot of the research will tell you that you look at yourself when you really feel you're doing well, or at least you're doing good. Because you actually have a better environment in some ways to discuss change than you will when things are really, not so good. So kind of what I want to do today is, and you all should stop me if I go along, because I'm one of these people, if you don't stop me, I'm gone, So I've been doing a lot of work over the last year since I left my superintendency, thinking not so much about schooling as much as I've tried to think about learning. Because I think there is a difference between schools and learning. I think that schools are one place where learning takes place. But for kids and for you, hopefully, it's all these other places where learning. So what I've been trying to do is to struggle in my own mind with, what are the kind of core issues that we ought to be looking at if we're going to transform learning for kids. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today and try to get through some of them. I have 13 of them. We won't get through all of them, but I'm going to try to get through some of them. But let me tell you, can you all see this? What this is that I found a book. It's a beautifully illustrated book called Falling Through the Cracks. And this is if you can see it, it's like here are the kids who are already falling through the cracks, and here are the kids who are on their way down. You can see their feet hanging through the cracks. And see, what I believe is that a lot of the way we approach learning in schools today, it works for a significant number of kids. But for a significant number of kids, it does not work well. And these are the ones who are falling through the cracks. And even for the kids that we think it's working well for, it could work better if, in fact, we were able to change the way that we approach learning. So I want to try to talk to you about some of those core issues. I want you to keep in mind that I'm concerned mostly about these kids who are falling through the cracks. Most of my background, most of my passion relates to our poorest children. And particularly, I have a particular interest in poor African American children, but I'm concerned about all poor kids and what it is that's happening to them. Because I think they are the majority of the kids who are falling through the cracks. So this is another thing that I don't know how you feel about this, but that drives me. Basically what it says is that what we have done is to put 20 or more kids the same age in a little room, confine them to desk, make them wait in line, make them behave. It is as if a secret committee now lost to history and made a study of children and figured out what the greatest number were least disposed to do and then declared that all of them should do it. And sometimes that's how I feel we treat kids. I mean, like we done figured out, hey, kids hate this. Good, let's make sure all of them have to do it. So that sort of sticks with me. So that's one kind of notion. And then the other one, and this is really something that I've always believed that Ron Edmonds said, and that is we can, wherever we choose, successfully teach all kids that schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to know to accomplish that task. Whether we do or not is finally dependent upon how we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. And what that says to me is that for kids who are of interest to us, we will make sure that they learn. And it isn't like there's no research out there to tell us what to do with a lot of the kids who are not. We don't suffer from lack of research. We suffer from lack of implementation of what we know. And so the real issue is not knowledge in that sense. The real issue is the political will to do what needs to be done to ensure that all kids learn. So if you keep those things in mind, let me start out with the thing that I think we have to begin. See, if you don't have high expectations for all of our children, then I don't know how we're going to get to it. And in America, you have to understand, I believe, the impact of race and class in terms of how that affects kids' capacity when they come to us. In other words, kids who are poor in America don't have the same resources period as kids with money. Race plays a big part in what kids' potential are in America. And for all, see, I do not believe that we have a colorless society. And I get very concerned, for example, I talk to young potential teachers all the time. And I had asked a student the other day, what did she see when she saw me? And she said, a human being. I said, what else? And she had a real hard time saying, I see a black man. And so my question to her was, why you got a problem with that? Well, because I don't want you to think this. I said, no. If you don't recognize me as a black person, then you're denying a part of who I am. The issue isn't that I'm black. The issue is what you think about that. And so what I'm saying is we have to recognize kids for what they are. We have to understand their being. But we have to respect their being. And in order to respect their being, we got to be prepared to learn about what does this mean to be the way we are. And I want to talk about that in a minute. There's a book, and I'm going to talk about books a lot. There's a book by a woman named Dr. Gloria Ladison Dillon. And the book is called The Dream Keepers. And you all ought to read this book, because it's about 10 or 9 dream keepers, excellent teachers who figured out how to teach African American kids. And 2 of those teachers are white, okay? Which is important for people to understand, because it ain't just about race to be able to teach kids of a different. It's about the other things that she can teach. But anyway, my point is that there has to be this level of expectations that we have for kids, and clearly expectations that we have for ourselves. But I'll take it a step further, and I say that we need people with our children who love them. And I've gotten in trouble with this. I had a guy stand up in New York and blast me by saying, his argument was, we don't need to love them We just have to teach them. And my question was, I'm not sure that you can do it. You can do the teaching part without the love. And let me tell you where I get it from. There's a book by Merryl called Return to Love. It's a beautiful book. But in the book, she talks about the fable of the frog and the prince. And what she talks about is, when the princess kisses the frog and turns the frog into a prince. What she says is that what this fable is about is the miraculous power of love to create a condition for transformation. And her argument is that if you don't love people, you can't reach them. And I believe if you can't reach them, there's no way that you can teach them. And so this love that I'm talking about is not the romantic love. I'm not asking people to feel the same way about kids that they do about their husband, their wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever. But it's another kind of love. It's a deep love and respect for the kids and their families and the communities that they come from. And it is this driving belief that these kids can excel. And all I'm arguing is, or asking you all to do, is to think about that. And I used to sometimes ask educators, well, all the educators in here who hate kids, raise their hand. And of course, people look at me like I'm an idiot. But I'm trying to make a point that unfortunately, there are those of us who go into this profession who hate kids. Or there are those of us who, over the years, for whatever reason, have become cynical and have lost, if we ever had it, this love and passion for kids. And all I'm saying is there's nothing worse than that. And so I start with this notion of expectations and love and respect and understanding the reality of kids' lives. You all have stop me. Do you have some questions about that or anything not clear about that? I'll keep going. I think as we talk about transforming learning, we have to talk about how do we transform the schools and the school systems of which we are a part. Einstein said that insanity is doing things the way you've always done it and to expect different results. Put another way, one of the interesting things about change is that most of us support change as long as nothing changes. And it's like people will go to a meeting and discuss change and accept that as change. The fact that everybody leaves and we cleanse and, but in reality, nothing changes. We continue to do the things the way we've always done it. What I'm trying to suggest is that we need to rethink how we look at schools, how schools and school systems are organized. We need a new paradigm. We need to create, and this may not apply to the lawyers, so some stuff I talked about because you're a smaller district. But see, what I want to do is to create a situation where the school is the locus of power in an organization, and that individual schools have the capacity to make curriculum, personnel, and budget decisions, and that you have the freedom to determine how best to act for the kids that you have. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. And in order to do that, I think what we need to do is to create learning organizations. And I want to talk about what is a learning organization. There's a book by Peter Sinton called The Fifth Discipline. Don't try to read it because it's laborious. If you got through it, hey, my hat's off to you. It took me a long time to get through it. but it is not easy reading. Okay? That's the bottom line. Now, the field book is easier to read than the book. But having said, don't read it. Pick it up and read at least the first 2 chapters. Because it gets into what is a learning organization, and it gets into these 5 disciplines of a learning organization that I'm going to share with you very briefly. First thing it says is that you have to have like personal mastery. Think about it for a minute. Each one of us ought to have a vision about what we see for our kids. We ought to have this notion of where we want our kids to be. And we ought to have a knowledge base to support how we're going to try to get kids there. In other words, you can talk all you want about how you want to help kids, but if you don't have a knowledge base, and you haven't mastered a knowledge base to help them get there, then you just talk. Okay? So you have to have this personal mastery, but then you have to be able to test your vision and your knowledge base against reality. Because some of us can say, I know just what to do. And you may, except you haven't figured out how to make it happen in the real world. It happens every day in your mind, which is interesting. Except if you can't bring it out of your mind and play it against reality, then it doesn't change anything. But at the same time, you have to have these mental models. Okay? What I mean by that is, you ought to have a model in your mind that you can see. There's a vision, but a vision creates a model. A model, it creates that. And again, you have to bring these mental models and you have to test it against reality. Now, in order for that to occur, you've got to create schools and organizations where you have a shared vision. A shared vision isn't the principal standing up announcing our shared vision. A shared vision is creating an environment where all of these personal visions are brought together so that in fact there is a shared vision. But to create a shared vision, you have to be able to engage in team learning. What team learning requires is dialogue. Dialogue is different than talking. Okay. And I mentioned this. There's a book by Lisa Delphin called Other People's Children, okay, which I think is fundamental to a lot of stuff. People always talk about what ought to happen to other people's children. And one of the questions I ask them is, would you put your child where you get ready to put other people's children? But anyway, like one of the chapters in her book is called Silence Dialogue. Dialogue requires that people listen very deeply to other people's views. And I know that's hard, especially for someone who you detest, or whose views are the exact opposite of yours. It's very difficult to listen to what they're saying, to try to find out what they're actually saying. But in order to have team learning, you have to create an environment that allows that to happen. What Lisa Delphin says is that when we get to the race issue in America, and our kids, we don't have dialogue between white and black colleagues. What we have is surface discussion. And as soon as we get to the real thing, you know when the kids say keep it real, as soon as it gets real, we put the brakes on. When you put the brakes on, you never get to the real issue. And since you don't get to the real issue, you don't solve them. And you also don't create ways to get to another place. And so one of the things that you all ought to think about is when you're having all these meetings and talking about these kids, are you really having dialogue? Are you really getting at the issues that people really feel deeply about? And I would say that in most instances, when it comes to race, that is not occurring in schools, and it certainly is not occurring in America. I mean, even with this presidential thing, we got these people running around talking about building bridges. One gonna build a bridge backwards, and one gonna build a bridge forward, and we gonna get run over in both of them. You know, but anyway, it's like, so you have to create this dialogue. The last thing is, you have to engage in the fifth discipline, which is systemic thinking. What systemic thinking is that you have to look at the broader piece of it, not just your part, but the broader part. It's like if you take it to a school and you say the school is the system, it's like you can't just go in your classroom. Everything's fine in my classroom. I mean, the question is, what is it that's happening in the system, the school, the whole school? How does that relate to what we're doing? You have to be willing to look at the larger whole. Just as to understand the school district, you can't just look at your school. We have to look at the school system. So we have to look at those broader definitions of what we are part of. That's in a quick way what Peter Sinji talks about in terms of creating learning organizations. It's something to think about. You know, it's something to consider as a way to figure out better ways of reaching our children in the schools that we're in. Another thing that I like to talk about a lot is, I use curriculum alignment, but I may come up with another term. But I think that what we have to have high standards. We have to have engaging instructions, and we have to have multiple ways to assess what kids know. The standards part is to be real crucial. We do have to have very high standards for all of our children. I just don't believe that you can have one standard for these children, another standard for these. We have to have high standards for all of our children. And the question is trying to figure out how do we get them there. And let me talk to you all about this. You tell me what you don't have to tell me. You're faint right with this. When I was a superintendent, one of the things I did was I visited all 156 schools. It took me 4 years. And I went into all of these classrooms, okay? And I'm getting ready to get into the high standards and engaging instruction. I would walk into a classroom where, how can I describe it? I saw it while I was here today, where you could see that this teacher was connected to these kids. You could see that the kids were into the instruction. But then you could walk out of that same classroom and walk right next door to death. You know, who said, it's death. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, you walk in there, ain't nothing happening. You know, it's almost like there's a truce. You know, when the teacher and the kids sign a truce. You know, I won't bother you if you don't bother me. But, you know, and let's get through the day. You know, and we'll get through the month. And then before you know it, it'll be June. You know, and what I'm saying is that we have to find ways to engage kids in learning. And the reason why I know it can be done is because it's being done every day. And people know it. And everybody knows who the teachers are that have the kids, and you know who the people are who are deaf. You know, it's hard, you know, with these kids. Now, I want to come back and talk about that, but we'll get to state accountability. But anyway, the notion is we have to have high standards. We have to find engaging ways of helping kids learn, and then we have to have these multiple assessments. Let me talk about one part of this for a moment. Let me talk about this, because this is an important thing. I don't know, there was a report that laid out what they thought. And so what the parents talked about were basic skills. What the reformers talk about are new competencies. The parents don't like what they hear. What did the parents say? The parents said that here's what we want. Reading, writing, math, speaking and listening skills. It's like when you talk to kids, I talk to them a lot, and I tell kids, look, I don't have a problem with you saying yo, but that can't be the whole sentence. I mean, you gotta say something after that. I mean, and I can't say, well, you know what I mean. No, I don't know what you mean. Tell me what you mean. But you can't. How can we talk about learning if kids can't read, or they can't speak, or they can't write? So it is not stupid for parents to be saying, I want my child to know how to read. I want my child to know how to count. I'm at the supermarket, because this is anecdotal, right? I'm at the supermarket, they don't know how to make change. And so they got all these little numbers on the machine because they can't count. That's why parents say, I don't want my child using a calculator until they can count. And what we got to be able to show parents is that a lot of what you think is sequential learning isn't. That in fact, you can learn the math table and use a calculator. There's ways of using technology to advance the development of basic skills. That it isn't like those things can't run together. They're concurrent skills rather than sequential skills. But we have to be able to show that to parents. We have to be able to talk about it in ways that they can understand. So that what you then begin to talk about are these new skills that you need, but you can't use the new skills if you can't read. You know what I'm saying? You can't write, you don't know how to think. So, for example, one of the most important new skills is choosing and using appropriate technology. All of us in this room know the importance of technology in the world in which we live currently. And so we've got to find ways to make sure that we're exposing kids and that we're helping kids learn how to use the technology. And then we need to learn from some of the kids who passed us in terms of what they know about some of this technology. So just think about how you combine those, quote, basic skills with these new skills that, we know that our kids are going to use. Let me try to tell you, because I want to come back to one point. Have any of y'all ever heard of Asa Hilliard? One thing I believe is that we need to talk about multicultural curriculum. I know it's not, it's not politically correct these days to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is, all the research that I've seen about learning says that kids need to see themselves in the learning process. Okay? So Asa Hilliard talked about the rules for domination. Now this could be true for race. It could also be true, frankly, for gender. But how is it that you dominate a people? Well, first of all, you take away their history. Or you distort their history. You lie about their history. You invalidate their culture. You talk about their culture as a subculture. You go back and read like the American Dilemma, which was written by Governor Merryl back in 1942. And it's like in footnote 11 of the Brown 1. They got all of these studies that they did that inform Brown 1. Brown 2, the D-Sec. This Brown 1, Brown 2. In these footnotes, there's the American Dilemma. There's a study by a guy named David Oostebel, There's the Isidore Chin study. And Roosevelt said that blackness is like a thing that is seared into your brain, you can never get over it in the most negative way. Gerda Murdoch said that our community was pathological. So what I'm saying is when people start, setting you up this way, what is it that you're going to think about yourself going forward? We have to think about the impact of this stuff. Gloria Ladison Billings looks at, she talks about it in this way. She says that, well, I'm going to use my own example. But one of the things that kids run into today, black kids, they run into situations where if they try to be smart, other kids say you're trying to be white. Now understand what that says, okay? That if you're white, you smart, the opposite obviously is true. So you're supposed to act black, which means to act dumb, right? Now how do you tackle something like that in the absence of taking black kids to brilliance in their own reality? To show that for you to be running around here talking about being smart and being white, do you know how ridiculous that is? Do you know who these people are? Do you know who did this? Do you know where blood plasma came from? Have you ever heard, you know what I'm saying? If you don't have a way to take kids and take them to that positive black reality, which she calls culturally relevant teaching, then what you've done is you've allowed a construct to be developed that defines them as negative, that allows them to be dominated and prevents them from learning. And so we got to figure out how to get through these rules of domination. He used an example, and you all may think this is totally ridiculous, but he was talking about how there were a group of educated black people who wanted to form a business. This was several years ago. They went to the bank. The bank would not give them the money to form the business. But had they gone to that bank and get a Cadillac, all those black folks would have got a loan. Because this ain't about accumulated wealth. This is about owing me. This is, I give you a Cadillac. You fool, you want to drive? Yeah, the bank give you money for a Cadillac. We ain't give you no money for no business. Think about that. The hoops, they were going to send them through, but they get a Cadillac over the phone. And so he was using that as an example of how you actually get dominated as a people. What we got to understand is how does all of that play back in the learning process? This is not about, not having kids read Shakespeare. This is not about not having kids read stuff about Western civilization. This is about having kids read both. This is about establishing a framework that is positive for kids that will help them want to read both. So, think about that. Let me try to move on. Y'all have any questions? If you don't stop me, I'm going to keep going. You go back. Okay.
Especially in light of the standards that, states and organizations are having to deal with, as it relates to curriculum alignment and also as it relates to professional development for current teachers. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna come up with a different term. Right?
Okay.
But anyway.
But also, curriculum alignment. The fact that the texts are out and kids are going to be tested, and they haven't been taught to have the strategies and how to take the test, the teachers haven't taught that, and it's neither of the false, but it's the reality.
Okay, let me deal with the assessment part. See, I want to, assess that. I don't think that standardized tests necessarily tell us a lot, but it don't matter what I think. Because as long as they're there, we got to prepare kids to deal with them. Because if you don't, what you're doing is you're shortcutting these kids' life chances. Because in the foreseeable future, whether you think they're the right thing or not, there are going to be all of these standardized tests. Okay? Now, there are two parts, it seems to me, to taking these tests. One of them is, for lack of a better term, content-based instruction, which has nothing to do with the nature of the test per se. In other words, if you have a third grade reading test, if your kids can't read, they're not going to do well on a third grade reading test. So there's got to be a teaching strategy having to do with reading that to me is independent of the third grade reading test at one level. But on the other hand, it's just like all the rest of us. If you're going to take the GRE or LSAT, any of these tests, what do? You go find, what do you think? Find a book. If you got some money, you find Stanley Capital. You find somebody who's going to help you figure out how to take this test. There's a difference between the strategy to take the test and the ability to read it. I mean, for example, the third grade reading test, I don't know when it was this year, but a couple of years ago when I was superintendent, the answers were in the paragraph. The issue was helping kids learn how to go into the paragraph and find the answer. It wasn't like the answer was nowhere. It was actually there, except most kids never knew, look, let's break these paragraphs down. Let's figure out where these answers are in these paragraphs. I've seen teachers use the test also to advance reading skills, but they were really, I didn't understand how they were doing it. But my point is this. I believe that we ought to have multiple assessments. You know, I like portfolios. I like exhibits. And I've seen exhibits around the country being used at different levels. I like the community to come in and ascertain what it is that kids know. I like anything that would help inform your teaching. Most standardized tests do not help inform your teaching. Because number one, by the time they give it, like if they give it in April, by the time you find out about it, you got a new group of third graders, or fourth graders, fifth graders. So it doesn't inform your teaching, right? So we have to have these assessments that inform your teaching. But the reality of it is, you've also got to help prepare kids for these standardized instruments. So how you do that is a very difficult situation, because I think that some of these tests actually do not help you develop ways to encourage higher order thinking. And so here you are as an educator trying to figure out how you deal with this dilemma. And I don't know the answer to it, except there are people who are dealing with it. I mean, we had schools, for example, where you had, quote, the worst kids, as people describe it, coming from the worst families. And they bombed the third grade reading. But bomb today is good. I have to remind you. When kids today talk about bombing something, it's positive. So anyway, so clearly there are ways of doing this. And people have figured out how to do it. Now, okay, but when I talk about curriculum alignment, what I'm really trying to do is simply to say, and that's why I'm going to use a different term, because I'm not talking so much about the traditional, you got to line up the curriculum, as much as I am trying to talk about these issues related to the curriculum. So I got to use a different term. Okay. Engage in instruction. All I'm trying to do there is to say, like Ron Evans said, is that we need to learn how to teach in all the ways that kids know how to learn. And if you read like Howard Gardner's stuff about multiple intelligences, so I believe that stuff. I believe that kids have all of these intelligences out there, but that many of us have never been trained to recognize it. And so what we have really essentially been trained to do is to operate from a deficit model. You know, all of the effective schools literature talked about that. You know, so those of you who were here pre-P5, you know, when a lot of the effective schools literature was in vogue, there was a lot of discussion about this deficit model that I still feel is operative. And that is that if you buy Howard Gardner's stuff, 7 or 8 intelligences, if a child has a real strength, let's say in self-expression through music or whatever, they're not really good at speaking immediately. The question is, how can you use that strength to build on to get to that weakness? But you have to first recognize the intelligence of that child. You can't start with the deficit of that child and define that child based on his or her, quote, deficit. There's a book called Outsmarting IQ by David Perkins. It's the best rejoinder that I've ever seen to the bell curve. And what he talks about is learned intelligence. That a lot of what we have been taught about intelligence is not true. And so if intelligence can be learned, quote, intelligence can be improved. If there are these multiple intelligences, then the question is not, are you intelligent? The question is, how are you intelligent? And that's a very different approach to learning, you know, for kids. The multimedia thing, that's just, we got to use all of the media. I wish I would have brought this. I got it with me. Yesterday I was doing some tutoring over at we run a thing. I'm trying to get learning centers located in churches and get computers in there for kids. And there's a church where the education building, they named it after me. But anyway, so I was over there last night. There was 96 kids. You know, and we feed them. You know, there's karate, there's sewing, there's music. They have to begin with helping with their homework. And so we do the tutoring, and then we're going to begin next week bringing them in shifts to the computers. And there's two parts, and we're trying to develop their skills, plus developing computer skills, the internet and all that. But anyway, I have this little thing with me that some people may know is called a bookman. Y'all know this? It's about this size, and it is a dictionary and a thesaurus. You hear what I'm saying? And an encyclopedia. It is this size. So it's like you have these book drives where people start to bring books for poor kids. More and more people are bringing encyclopedias. Why? Because they have computers at home, and they got it software, or they got one of these book manuals, which the encyclopedia is on a little disc that is this large. The King James Version of the Bible is this big. What am I saying? I'm saying that the speed in which this technology stuff is moving and the utility of it is phenomenal. But we got to understand it. You know, it's like, this is the only sports joke I'm going to tell you. I have to tell you, this is a gem, I got to tell you a sports joke. They were talking about this basketball player, coach, I'm sorry, and they was asking him about his recruitment practice. And he was talking about how he recruits huggers. You know, what are huggers? He said, well, you know how it is. You're in the gym, and you have this real close basketball game, and, you know, you make the basket at the last minute, and everybody's jumping up and down and sweating and all of this. So I got my new suit on. You know, I'm going to be running out there hugging all these sweaty people. So I got a group of people who never get off the bench. When it's time to hug, I run to them. So when they take the picture in the newspaper, I'm hugging somebody, but I ain't hugging nobody that's going to make me all sweat. Well, you know, for some of us, computers are like us. We have them in the classroom if we're lucky, or in a lab, and we point to it. You know, we hug. But they're not embedded in the curriculum. They are like I said, outside, kind of tangential to the curriculum. What I'm arguing for is curriculum embedded in the curriculum. I mean, technology embedded in the curriculum, so that it is a real part of the learning process. And I think that's, you know, really crucial. Let me talk about this, because I know it's almost time to close. I'm on a real crusade about professional development. And I was on it actually before this report came out. The report that just came out recently said professional development in America is terrible, as if we didn't know that. But here's what I believe, and you ought to think about this. And tell me what you think of it. If we want teachers and other educators to do things differently, how will that happen if we don't allow the time for them to learn how to do it differently? The way we do, quote, professional development in America is a joke. This stuff we call in-service. I mean, even like this, and I'm glad y'all here, but how creative are you at the end of the day? You know, you think I do. You know what I'm saying? And it's learning. You know, only work day was if it was tomorrow. I mean, you know, like, you've been dealing with our children all day. I mean, and hey, you know what I mean, now we're going to get together and be creative. Or, oh yeah, there's a real dynamite thing that's going on in Utah. 2 of y'all can go. Okay, so you got 30 teachers in the school. 2 people go. The only way you know they went is that you either got to take over their class or you got a substitute. Okay, they go out there and they learn some dynamite stuff. I mean, they fire it up when they come back, right? There's no way for them to now help you know it because there's no time in the day to really for them to bring it back to you. Secondly, they go in the classroom and it's very as soon as you take something new that was great out in Utah, when you bring it back into your classroom, you run into problems. Problem is, there's nobody in there to help you with the problem that has occurred. So what do? You go back to what you knew. Even if what you know don't work. But at least you're comfortable with it. I mean, you know it. You know, so if anybody coming in and check you out, I mean, you know what you're doing. It ain't right. But you know what you're doing. So what do you do about that? And I'm only raising this as an example, not for any other reason. My wife is Dr. Deborah McGriff. She used to be the superintendent in Detroit. She now works for the Edison Project, which, you know, is a profit-making firm. But the reason why I'm raising is not that, is but they have figured out how to give all of their teachers 90 minutes each day for professional development. And it's not through mirrors, no smoke and mirrors. It is 2 or 3 things that they do. First of all, they have a longer school day. They have 210 days, but 10 of those days are strictly for professional development. They bring all of their teachers together 1 month before school starts. But they still have this 90 minutes each day. And I know it because I visited the charter school in Boston and sat down with a group of teachers during the time when they were coming together. It's how they use their art, music. It's the way they have these specialists And it's the way that they use them, it's the way that they have structured their day and their school. What am I saying? I'm saying that we got to start thinking about our calendar as one way to get to more time for professional development. Now, even if we get more time, we still got to get serious about professional development. What do we really mean by it? We got to spend time trying to improve our practice. Okay? There's a book called A Learning Gap by Stevens, and he talks about the length of time that Japanese teachers are in school versus American teachers. And what he says is that Japanese teachers are in school longer than American teachers, but they teach less. Because they recognize that you have to have, on a day-by-day basis, the opportunity for teachers to meet together to discuss their work and to improve their practice. We've got to make a stronger argument for that in America. And we've got to figure out ways to try to make that happen. And so, I don't know. I just don't know how we're going to do what we want to do unless we pay attention to this. Because I believe that there are those of you out there who would do things differently if somebody would show you what it is and how to do it, and also give you the background on why this works. You know, and there's research out there, there's stuff out there, and I want to expose it. I want it to be exposed to you in a way that makes sense. And the way we're going about doing it now, I do not think makes sense. It's 5 o'clock. There are a lot of other points, but let me just leave you with this. This guy, David Perkins, is interesting. He also wrote a book called Smart Schools, in addition to that book on IQ. And I did a workshop with him a few months ago. This is the thing I want to leave you with. It's sort of like what we started. This thing about how much we've learned about learning. I'll give you an example. I gave a speech 2 weeks ago at the University of Wisconsin Center for Educational Research. You know, it was in Madison. 12 floors. Last year they had $50 million to do research on education. I concluded after being there a day that they have researched everything there is to research twice. You know, I know there's a book up there, there's a project up there that has dealt with every question that I ever thought of. So the problem isn't the research or what we've learned. So it's not a knowledge gap, it's a use of knowledge gap. And that's what we got to struggle to deal with, is what is it that continues this use of knowledge gap? It goes back to the issue of political will. It goes back to the way that we've structured ourselves and our inability to get out of the box and to begin to think and act differently. And what I would leave you all with, again, is the Lord, is that I think that you all have a real opportunity that a lot of places don't have, and that is that some of the problems that people are experiencing in other districts are either just beginning to get to the Lord, or they're not at a scale yet that won't allow you to try to figure out how to deal with it. But that what history has shown us is that we don't deal with those, we don't anticipate what's getting ready to happen to deal with it at a point that we can deal with it. We wait until we're overrun, and then everybody throws up their hands while we got to do something. And so I ask you all to think about that, you know, and think about ways that you might do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you again, Dr. Brooks, for coming and visiting with us, and especially with a day like today where you are very busy and we've got teachers at a time when they're not perhaps as productive as we might might like us to be. And I guess that's one of the things I would challenge us to continue to think about. All that he said was a lot of thought-provoking things that we need to continue to think about, but also acting on is how we can continue to work together, because it is difficult to try and do some of the things that we need to do when we have time in this after school. So I appreciate the giving of your time to be here, to hear what Dr. Brewer had to share with us, and for us to begin to start strategizing on ways that we can improve the achievement of our students and our own professional growth and development. So again, let's thank Dr. Brewer for coming and sharing with us.
Do you have culture. As Shirley Bryce Heath says, different cultures have different ways of parent-child interaction. In middle-class families, one of the things that middle-class people learn as they go through school is that you're supposed to talk a certain way in school. One of the ways Shirley Bryce Heath calls event cats, that means if you ask me, what did I do, da-da-da, I'm supposed to tell you a story. And that story is supposed to have a certain structure, and it is supposed to contain certain vocabulary, and it is supposed to be said at a certain pace, and I'm supposed to sit or stand a certain way, and I am supposed to look at you directly when I do it, and I am to use certain gestures. Is this not accurate? Now, many middle-class children are trained to do that. They learn, they're trained to do that, so they get a lot of practice doing that. Many poor children aren't. It's not a bad good, it's a different. It's not a bad good, it's a different. Now, I spent most of my time during the interviews in tears. So nothing about these interviews you could call objective, because I just sobbed and cried all the time. And they would clean me up and wipe my mascara and offer me chocolate milk and all other kinds of things, because I was just pitiful. You know, one said, poor thing, she's a basket case. Well, they often said nobody ever listened to them, and nobody ever asked how they felt. That might be one of the things you might want to do. They don't trust you. And they don't trust you because they have a reason. They have a history of knowing that you fall for their cons, that you can't see through to the child who's scared. Why is it at UC Berkeley, every fall after midterms, the Learning Center is packed with lines of white upper-class students standing, waiting to try to get in the Learning Center because they did not get their A on the midterms. They got maybe a B, a C, a D, or failed. How could that happen with these great SAT scores, with these great characteristics? Very easily. You con enough, and there's certain huge gaps that appear. For the first time, they were in a situation where the con didn't work. Why did the lows con? To survive. I'd con if I was a low in a minute. Imagine somebody, I know when I go to school, some SOB is going to say you're done. Or I'm in level 13, you're in level 9. Because of that, I absolutely and totally believe in heterogeneous grouping. Absolutely and totally believe in it. I hate these level books. If there is going to be a damn level, then put them all in the same book, and then put them in groups, and call the groups skill groups, like the main idea group. You've got a group of kids who need to work on main idea, then put them together in a group of 5 or 6. And call them, don't call them the Jets. I mean, they know that as soon as first grade, that the Jets, are really, the what? The slowest thing that can move. They're the mules. That's what they are. They know that. But call them what they are. If you're the sequencing group because you have trouble sequencing, then that's what you are. You're in the sequencing group. Or you're in the phonics group because you haven't gotten certain phonics skills, and that's important. Or you're in the sight word group. Or you're in the science vocabulary group because you need to get this science vocabulary down. And you're in that group for 2 to 3 weeks and no longer, because then you rotate to other groups that you may need. So if you want to use skills are very possible to do. Skill groups can be done within a heterogeneous class. The reality is we haven't done such a damn good job with ability-based grouping. If we had, we wouldn't have the horrible literacy problem that we have in the United States right now. So ability-based grouping has never been an instructional tool. It's a management tool. And we've been set up. We've been conned. And you know who conned us? Do you know who's been conning you? Who conned you? No. No, the kids are the victims. Publishers conned you. Because they make millions and millions and millions of dollars. How do I know? I live the world. When we say we don't want these basals because they don't have enough literature in them or enough comprehension, every single damn publisher pulls their basals back, because when they sell to us, they make money. Now, not only have we gotten rid of heterogeneous grouping, we have gotten rid of basals. So we also have to teach a total literature-based curriculum. So my students, I've got a stack of units this high that my students have created that are for heterogeneous grouping, kindergarten all the way through 6th grade, literature-based, concept-based, etc. Now this thing is difficult to use. Now I'm going to tell you why. This was a quick cut and paste job to make money. So when you find yourself going through here thinking, well, why is this here? Or this story doesn't make sense. Or, you know, there was one, what was that one where it was somebody Hanks, it was somebody's president's mother, Nancy Hanks, and I said, Nancy Hanks, who in the hell is she? You know, I mean, I'm trying to see some author sitting down writing this saying, oh, we've got to have Nancy Hanks in here. You know, what is this? Come on. You know, and so I looked through this, and they have these little silly excerpts, and I'm not sure what all this means. These skills aren't in any kind of order at all. They are not organized by strategy at all. So you're getting a bunch of activities thrown at you randomly, which means that you have to do something very important. And that's what I have time. Good, I'll give you a break in a minute, but I'm not going to give you a break until I teach you something. Then I'll give you a break, and you can come back and you can do it. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to teach you. What I'm telling you is the truth. I'm telling you the truth about these kids. I did not spend that long period of time listening and crying with kids. I know that they're telling me the truth. So stop falling for the con and get rid of those damn groups. And I don't care what you do. I mean, I had to do it. I did it. I taught ability-based groups for years, and then one morning I kept saying, this is so boring. One, it's boring. It was for me. Sitting there, and they always did the same thing. You know, the characteristics are like eternal, aren't they? And by the time they get to 6th grade, they've got them down pat. And it was just so boring. I said, I have had this. I mean, here they are still doing this, still doing this. Boom. I'm not having any fun. And so I came in the next day, and of course I'd seen all my tapes, and I was horrible, and I was doing these horrible things to these kids in the low groups. And I said, no more groups. None. No more. We're through with reading groups. That's the end of it. Well, they all looked at me. I said, yeah, and they said, yay, yay, yay. I said, I'm just through with it. I said, now I don't know how I'm going to teach reading yet, but I'm going to figure it out. But we're not going to have any more groups at all. We're going to work together, and we're going to help each other, and you're going to have to help me learn how to do this. And all the things I love to read, I'm going to bring in, and I'm going to get you to read them, and then you're going to share them with people. And then if there's stuff that I think you don't know, and you know the things you don't know that you get messed up on, then I'm going to throw you in groups and give you some dittos and stuff, and you're going to work on them, and you're going to learn them, and you're going to stay there a few weeks, and then you're going to move to something else. But we're going to read, and we're going to do plays, and we're going to do all kinds of stuff, and you're going to end up really loving to read, just like I do, because I haven't had any fun as your teacher. So that's what I did. And shall I tell my story? Yes. Shall I tell the famous story? Okay, I'll tell the famous story. Okay, so because this is real, but that's what I have on this. But I'll still tell it. I'll be careful with it. All right. Now, this year that I decided to do this was a 5th grade class. And I mean, I had everything from 2.3 in terms of testing and reading all the way up to, I don't know, 11 something. Because in Berkeley, you got the Hill kids and you got the Flatland kids. So I had everything. Every ethnic group you can imagine, right? Now here I'm doing heterogeneous grouping, you know, and we're in our skills groups. And, you know, am I doing it right? Who the hell knows what right is? I knew what wrong was. So, I mean, at least I knew I wasn't doing it wrong. I wasn't hurting anybody's feelings. I wasn't damaging their self-esteem. I wasn't making them feel dumb. Well, that felt a lot more important to me quote this right. I figured I was doing it right. They're reading a lot more. They're talking a lot more. They're using vocabulary a lot more. I can move them out of these skills groups more. Those smarties who I thought knew so much didn't know crap, which means that having them work with those kids that I thought were so dumb, who weren't dumb, was real good to do, because then the smarties learn more, which helped a lot. And I also found out something called the potential reading level, which I suggest you do with all your kids. You know, in continuity reading, that's a lot which you have to teach at your level. There are a lot of kids who can answer questions and do things when you read something aloud. That's called the potential reading level, the level at which a kid can respond to vocabulary accurately and comprehension questions. As research shows, it's 2 to 3 years above their standardized test score. Now, the reason why it's important to do the potential reading level is because it will change your expectations about that child. Now, we think of, and this is such a dirty word, and it goes, I mean, I could put other dirty words up here, which I will not do, but I think this is one of the dirtiest words of all. Decoding. Oh, yuck, yuck, yuck. The word that I love, and it's a strategy, which if they bring me back, I'm going to teach you about and how to use it, is word analyzing. Making them analyze. I went out and bought all my kids little detective hats that they could wear. No, I did. I'm serious. I was a nut. You have to understand this. And so, I mean, when we were analyzing words, if you were in a group that had to do word analyzing, prefixes, suffixes, whatever it was, then you put on your little detective hat, I mean, because you had to get busy and analyze. I had these, you know how you can buy those little cheap magnifying glasses? Because we had to analyze this word. But, you know, you think this is funny, but let me tell you something. See, you all think this is funny. But see, you have to realize that in some interesting ways, I am brilliant. And I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, Peter Johnston, who is one smart guy, Harvard Educational Review, May '85, did one of the best studies on understanding reading disability, a case study approach, where he looked at 3 males who couldn't read, who were illiterate, from their 20s to their 40s. Now, 45, 26, 43. Now, you think what I said was silly about the magnifying glass. But as he goes through this thing, which is very emotional and very dear, and it shows you what happens when we screw them up in the beginning, there was this word sewer, and there was this word, poor baby, sign. Now, the guy couldn't read it, and Johnston figured out that the reason he couldn't read it was because he hadn't learned how to count letters. Now, in early research in reading, one of the ways, see, we don't remember any of this stuff. Do you remember when you figured out what a word was? Well, there's one way to figure out if a kid knows what a word is, and that is every time they think they've read a word, they tap. Some kids don't know what a word is. You can't assume anything. Well, this guy who was in his 40s had never learned how to really look at a word, really analyze it. Remember I told you like this with his hat on? I bet if he'd had me with his hat and his magnifying glass, he wouldn't have made this mistake, because as soon as Johnson said, but don't you see, sewer has S-E-W-E-R, 5 letters in it, and sign has 4. Doesn't it? And he said, oh, it sure does. He'd never even gotten to that level of analysis. Do you see what I'm saying? And look how powerful analyzing is, as opposed to the coding, which is the pits. Now I'm going to tell you my story. Okay, now that you know, I'm going to tell you my story. So I had done all of this stuff. I told you I didn't know what I was doing, but we had our read aloud, because I love to read, so I was always reading aloud to them all the time. And then I didn't know about sustained silent reading or any of that fancy stuff, but I did want them to read by themselves. So we started off 5 minutes. And they could bring their sleeping bags or their pillows, because when you read, how do you read? I mean, I don't read sitting at a chair at a desk at home. I read in bed, I read on the floor, I read in the bathroom, I read in the tub, I read everywhere, right? Okay, and sometimes when you read, you like to eat and drink, right? Okay, so they could, right? Yeah, so they could bring their fruit and stuff, or I would buy a big bag of popcorn, and we had baskets. And so they could bring their pillows and everything. So we got to the point where they could read all afternoon, and I read too. Now, I was in a school with a real handsome principal. Now, I was married at that time, and I was not interested in him. But he was interested in me. Now, this was many years ago. So, what he would do is that he would come to my room every day and just stand in the back like this and watch me. Now, this was, to say the least, unnerving, which was why I ended up leaving teaching and became a district trainer in language arts because I couldn't take it anymore. But this was what really did it. This did it. Okay. Now I've taught them all this stuff. They're oranges, they're apples they can bring. No candy, none of that. We got to do the fruit stuff, okay? I knew that much. And so their sleeping bags, and I had my pillow. Now, during this period of time, I was tired because I'm working full time, I'm going to school full time, and the rest of stuff. So I'm on the floor, okay? And I guess I had a pillow, and I was kind of leaning back, reading like this. Well, by then, they had really learned, well, my shoes were off because I did not read with my shoes on. So my shoes were off, so I'm like this. Well, not yet. I had on pants, so it wasn't quite like this. Anyway, what happened? I had to change my shoes and clothes to teach this way because you're always bending down and doing stuff watching. And so, okay, so I fell asleep. Now it's just as simple as that. So this is me, like this. And so, at this point, the children have been able, I've worked with them so that they can read from the time they come from lunch until the bell rings. And it's just great. I mean, they just read and they have little pairs and it's real quiet and nice in there. They just love it. So they've just been reading and I've fallen asleep. And all of a sudden, I think I've been sleeping a long time. But all of a sudden I hear, my name was Poirier then. Miss Poirier, wake up. And so you know how it is when you're really asleep. So I just kind of twisted around a little. Miss Poirier, wake up. And so I opened my eyes kind of. And I kind of looked up, and my head was kind of like this, and I saw these great big brown shoes. And I thought, oh shit. And so I slowly let my eyes wander up, and guess who I was looking at? Him! And I had to get up like this, which is not easy to do and be elegant, and explain this. And Sherry, who ran the room, she really ran the room. She was the one who's been trying to wake me up. So he said, Mrs. Poirier, the reason I came in here was because your class was so quiet. I thought that you'd gone on a field trip and hadn't told me, because I did try to escape. But what they had done was they knew that I was tired, so they had gotten all their desks cleaned up, all the food stuff put away, all their stuff ready, and they were at their desk, and they were waiting for Cherry to give the signal to wake me up so that I could take them out. Now that's what happened. Now if you said to me, Candy, how did that happen? What was the magic? Did you take your magic wand and go boom, boom, boom over them, and all of a sudden they acted like that? Hell no. I was saying, Daryl, you better shut your mouth. Now listen, we've got to listen to each other from now on. I know I don't listen, but I'm trying to, because I had heard that the research said that if you listen to kids from 5 to 10 seconds, it made a big difference. So when we were talking about books or something, and I was reading a book to them, and I asked I love this book, and I asked a DRTA question, what you think is going to happen next. Like, last year she forgot the maps and our lunch on the kitchen table. This book is about Aunt Martha, and she takes her niece all over. They go to North Carolina and all over together, and they have so much fun. And so I might ask the question, well, what do you think is going to happen on this trip? And, I didn't like hands. I said, no hands. I want you to be able to quietly look at each other and make decisions about who's going to speak. All right, so that was hard to do. So these hands would come up, or somebody would shout something out, or interrupt somebody else. Now, I am not a nice manager, so I didn't have nice little techniques like flashing the lights on or all that. My technique was shut your mouth up. I told you we're working on listening. And so I'm standing up there and I said, now I'm counting my 5 seconds. Be quiet because I can't say anything until I've counted 5 seconds. So I'm waiting for this child to answer. And I'm looking at her and smiling, and inside I'm going, 1001, 1003, 1004, 1005. Because Mary Bud Rose research in 1962 showed clearly that if you just do that, that's all you do. If you just do that, oral language is going to zoom off the chart. Divergent thinking is going to come out like crazy. She's got this whole long list of wonderful things that happen when we just shut our mouths and wait 5 to 10 seconds. And don't answer the question ourselves, which we do. And don't let anybody else answer it for that kid or interrupt that kid. But we have to have strong management skills to do that. So it's uncomfortable for a while. But it got to the point where they got the idea that I was serious about this and it wasn't going to change. Now, did I put them into groups? Yes, I did. I grouped them for skills, but I also grouped them according to concepts. And that's what I'm going to give you a brief thing in today, and then I'm going to give you a chance to do it, and we do have time. Yeah, great. Okay, now, I've been trying to figure out how to do this stuff for a long time, about 15 years, or longer than that, really. Which, you think 15?
Come on, 10.
No.
Well, 13,
Okay. No, I will compromise, 13. So, I've been trying to figure all this stuff out because for the first time, we dummies who have PhDs actually know something about teaching. Now, before, we didn't know crap. Now, I'm telling you the truth because I went to school with some of the best and brightest, and they still don't know crap. But nobody would take themselves into the classroom. They'd pull you out and talk to you. Now, you're very different here than you are in there. See, I have to come in and see you all in there to really get a sense of you. Now, you here, this is a social situation where we all have to act a certain way, right? Isn't that right? Okay. So, given that, I said to myself, for the first time, we're going into classrooms, we're talking to kids, we're watching teachers. Instead of telling them what to do, we're actually watching what they're doing, da-da-da-da-da. We're actually finding out that there's we're learning a little bit about the way human beings think. We don't know how human beings learn language. We don't know how they do. I'm telling you the truth. We don't know. We have some guesses, but we don't know. We don't know how kids learn to read. Now, we do know that if they come from a home where their parents have taught them the ABCs and the numbers, and there have been books around and they've been read to, that they generally come to school, quote, knowing how to read. But I'd lay 10 to 1, they come to school with the behaviors that look like knowing how to read. And the real knowing how to read stuff happens in the classroom. I'd lay it 10 to 1 on that one. And the others who don't get that, don't get those behaviors, right? And those that kind of get it halfway are the ones who end up in the middle and schizoid. Because they got some of the behaviors, but they didn't get them all. And they can't figure out which ones they didn't get or got, right? Okay, that's absolutely true. Now, I've been trying to figure out since these things work, and I know that they work, because I've taken these low kids, quote, and worked with them, and I hate low kids because they're not low kids. And these less able readers and all this crap. I mean, it's just these kids who quote, I don't know what's going on. I figure I'm doing something wrong because I always take responsibility. So, I'm a low teacher with these kids. That's kind of the way I look at it. The kids are fine, it's me. So I take responsibility on myself. The kid's fine, it's me. Now, what am I doing wrong, I'll say to the kid. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is this. How can we, if we have a literature-based curriculum, where there's, and this literature, watch this stuff, please use your librarians and books you like, and don't go back to those old books, because they're mostly going to be white, and Laura Ingalls Wilder's, and The Little Garden, or The Lost Secret, or whatever that book is about this little girl in this garden. Get some multi-ethnic stuff. I've been making my students do it. I've got a long list of multi-ethnic writers Buy it, buy Asian group and everything else that I'll make sure that everybody gets, because the kids love it, of all races, they love it, because the stories are so wonderful when we put them together. So then I learned a principle that I teach my graduate students, and it's called rip and tear. Now, rip and tear simply means that you take this thing called the basso and you rip and you tear it apart. Now, that means that this thing is not holy. It isn't. It can burn, you can stomp on it, and you can also go through it and say, there's some of these stories that have kind of the same idea in them, some of the poems. Okay, if I put these stories together and I think of a basic concept like a basic concept is defined as a big idea in one simple, not long sentence. Everything I do is short. Because Mom used to tell me if you really know it, you should be able to make it short. Not all things, but ideas. All right, now, families are different and special. That is a basic concept, right? Could you teach this all year? Could you have books around this? Could they do interviews? Could you do charts and graphs? Could you do social studies projects on what families are like? Could you build in math to this? Of course you could, because you've got an idea. You're teaching an idea. This goes up on a banner in your room. It is the focus every time you're teaching so that you remember the children. Remember, we're looking at the basic idea, the big idea that families are different and special. Are there book stories in here that are going to fit there? Yes, there are. There's stories in here that are going to fit there. This book will fit there so that you can use a variety of books, even this book will, in terms of this one. Books that I wrote, and I'm not pushing them. I'm not pushing them, I'm not. Everett Anderson's Goodbye will fit. Circle of Gold will fit. Forever Friends will fit. So you've got all of this stuff that will fit. Look at the range in terms of reading range and vocabulary and ideas. Now, one of the most powerful books that I've ever read is this guy named Donald Cruz, who I think is great. Man, I've never met him, but if I did, wow. Now, he wrote this, I think this is one of the finest books in the world to talk about word analyzing. It's called Freight Train. Have you seen it? Wow, is it great. I use this with 6th graders because it's such a great word, because it does words so well. A train runs across this track. Red caboose at the back, that's you. Orange tank car next, yellow hopper car. Green cattle car, blue gondola car, purple box car. Now look at how he's using language. We're doing word analyzing now. A black tender and a black steam engine. And please capitalize black. I make my students do that. Now, then look at what he does. Freight train. Now look at how he has word analysis. Look at how he has organized the concept of a freight train. Do you see what he's done? He took it apart and put it together. Fascinating. Moving. That's one verb. Going through tunnels. You gotta love words. Going by cities. Imagine the art you can bring in and go with words. Crossing trestles. I never understood what a trestle was till I read this book. And I've crossed trestles, but I never really saw them until now. Moving in darkness, moving in daylight, going. God. And that goes with a lovely little poem, if I can find it, which I probably can't. There's a lovely, oh yeah, maybe I can. There's a lovely little poem by Kenneth Koch, and I'll give you the source and stuff later. It says, one day the nouns were clustered in the dark, in the street. An adjective walked by with her dark beauty. The nouns were struck, moved, changed. The next day, a verb drove up and created the sentence. This is a verb book and an adjective book. Very popular. You see what I'm saying about word analyzing and the kind of stuff you could do in a group that needed to begin to look at words, actually look at them in ways that were safe and secure and fun. Okay, now that's how you can use a lot of different stuff. Now, families are different and special. This is a basic concept, a big idea in a simple sentence. Now that's just one I made up off the top of my head. So we're going to brainstorm, and you're going to come up with some right now. Come on. Anything to do with families. Because you see, we got a problem in this country now. Over 50% of the poorest people in this country are poor, and right with them goes their mamas. And so we've got lots of groups moving in with different kinds of family systems, extended family systems. My people are losing our extended family system and trying to get it back. Other groups don't use extended family systems, so we've got all kinds of families. Some kids have come from institutional families, if you can call that a family. All right, especially at your grade, they've moved all over the place, some of them. All right, now, families are different and special. Another basic concept. Let's go. Come on, think.
Do you want it about families or about families?
Yep. I want to focus on families.
Single parent family?
No. Big idea in a simple sentence.
Divorce?
Big idea. Give me a sentence.
Some families only have one parent.
Some families play together.
Some families were destroyed by war or broken by war.
Are broken by war. Okay, I'm going to stop here. All right, basic concept, families are different and special. Basic concept, over time, families change. Basic concept, some families are broken by war. Fact, some families have only one parent. Fact, some families play together. Put that together into a basic concept. A big idea in a simple sentence. What do you really want to say? The person who put some families only have one parent, I suggest is dealing with the concept of what a parent is, and that one parent. What is a parent? Somebody who loves you and is there for you when you need them, cares for you daily.
Family pride.
Sentence.
This sounds like
Low group, doesn't it? Are you getting the low group feeling?
Families are different.
That's right. We can't just have, and that's what this thing, that's part of this. You see, this is related to this, which means that we may have one MO, and a MO is your master objective. It is the one thing, I'll write this stuff up here as I do it so that you have it. I'll start here. Okay, a basic concept is a what?
A big idea is a single sentence.
A big idea, not a fact, but a big idea in one, only one simple, that means you want it short with a punch, sentence. All right. And MO equals your major objective. Your major objective is the one key experience, the one key experience you want your readers to have. And put reader to have. The one, just the one that you want them to have. That's really important. Just the one that you want them to have. Because you want to make sure they get, if it's inferential questioning, then you want them to have the experience of hearing inferential questions, responding to inferential questions, creating inferential questions based around something they have read that deals with the basic concept that families are what? Different and special. Do you see what I'm saying? So that the skills fall within. Now, a major objective is like a great big skill. Now, 3, your MOs are organized in sequence into something special. And that something special is what I call, and it's simple to do, a clock map. Now, the clock map is a unit that can go on for a long time. In fact, if we take an MO and we take some families were, are broken by war. That's a big idea in a little sentence. And what's important, look at your verb. All right, let's take our first MO. What would we'd have to get a collection of books. What poems? Magazine articles, right? Could we rip and tear out of here and find something about families or something about war or something about research tools? I don't know. Could we find anything on skills, on mapping, maps, DRTA, some kind of stuff they've got in there that could be used? Okay, fine. I know they got bunches of stuff on mapping in there, and mapping is a strategy. So we can move to a lot of activities on mapping, right? All right, so we can put together a group of books. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to what? Get, 15 copies of one book? Maybe 15 copies of another. Set the kids up in groups, all right? They all do the same thing, because we've got our skill groups going elsewhere, right? Now I'm talking about one unit that goes all year round. All right, let's take one MO. And MO is real simple. No, list isn't the right word. Will.
Describe.
And that'll help, because then we're going to have to really work with this verb, and that's why this one will take a long time. Our first MO could be, we'll describe characteristics of a family, which means that they're going to have to read a lot of different books about a lot of different families, right? And they're going to have to understand some important words like characteristics, and what does that mean, right? So we're going to have to model that for them. Now with describe, what are we going to focus on here? One, we've got to have teacher models. What is needed? Two, our emphasis here, the strategy that we're going to focus on, and a strategy is a tool that can be transformed in a lot of different ways, is mapping. So we're going to look at all kinds of different maps here. They're going to work on all kinds of different experiences and maps. Why? Because as continuity teachers at the 6th grade level, they've got to be able to organize large amounts of information in ways that have relationships and make connections. And one of the best ways to do that is through mapping. Now, I'm not going to go through a thing on mapping because you all have gone through lots of stuff on mapping, right? But this is where you use it. That's what the purpose of a map is. The purpose of mapping is to be able to transform this information visually. It's a visual way so that it becomes connected, makes sense. We can cut, leave things off, pull in what's important. Very complicated. All right, so the teacher models what is needed. The learner reads alone, with partner, with teacher, to be able to complete a Venn diagram. Isn't that a form of a map? Huh?
Yeah.
B, charts for 3 books. Right? Isn't a chart a form of a map? A visual display of information? Right? You with me? Okay. Well, what other kinds of maps have you been taught? Flow chart? All right, maybe let's leave it there. All right, now that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to be able, you're going to model what is needed, so you'll model whatever, how to do a Venn diagram with them. They're going to have to read alone, with the partner, with the teacher, so they can complete this. And then 3, you want them to share their maps with a partner and list characteristics. Okay, fine. Now, how long is this going to take you? A while. That's good. I like a while. All right, how long is this MO going to take you? Month? 6 weeks? Because we can up it from 3 books to 4 to 5. Doesn't make any difference. You might only be able to get 7 copies of a book, so you might have to divide them into different groups and circulate the books around. Do the books all have to be at the same grade level? No. In fact, you don't want them at the same grade level because you want the concept presented in a lot of ways. You would certainly you wouldn't want to leave out something like Everett Anderson's Goodbye. Everett Anderson, what she's done with this series is beautiful. Clifton took a black boy in a project and took him through his whole life, and he loses his father. And this is when he has to say goodbye to his father. Now look at characteristics of a family here. You see, they're not only going to get the characteristics through words, where are they going to get them through? They're going to get them through pictures, and so that's why, look. Look at this. Look. Look at this. Now look how the culling stopped the con. Isn't this beautiful? Look. Even in families, sometimes we're alone, right? Now, when children look at books, when white kids look at books like this, they're not thinking, oh, there's a nigger. That's not what they're thinking. I know, because I spend 90% of my time going around as an author talking to white kids about my books. White kids in Plymouth, Indiana, pick Charlie Pippin as a book they like best for the International Reading Association 1988 Children's Choices. Plymouth, Indiana? Well, I mean, they weren't, yeah, Charlie's black, that's special, that's important, but these kids are reading for what? What did they want in the research? They want stories, because we're human beings, and we started
and moving from just being animals by sitting around something called fire and telling stories. Isn't that how we started? Well, let's not lose it, for heaven's sakes. So look at what we can do. All right, so you want to teach mapping. You want them to have experience mapping all the way through. You want them to learn. You can take, you can have families, all kinds of families, all kinds of wars. You can bring in social studies. You can talk about all kinds of stuff. You can have people come in. You can have vets come in. You can have them do surveys and charts. You can do all of this stuff. They can read stuff from a variety of reference books, which means that they're going to have to learn how to take notes, right? They're going to have to organize. They can have debates. They can do all this oral language writing stuff that this is involved with. And how do we do it? Very simply, we set up a clock map. All right, now here we've looked at the characteristics of a family. We're not going to leave this behind because they're going to continue to do this as they read on. Learner, okay, will be able, now look at the repetition, to list or to describe. Now look at this. Look at repetition. Repetition is essential. That's one of the things we do in teaching. We go jump, and then we go jump over here, and then we wonder why in the devil they don't understand. We learned a lot. I know, but we do it, don't we? You know, and with a clock map, you dance in and out of the basic concept. That's what you do. You dance into it, you dance. And who is your partner? Your partner is the learner. You're dancing with your partner. So you're dancing into this basic concept, and you're dancing out of it. And then you're dancing back to pick up ideas, the diagrams, the things, the skills you taught, and you're dancing forward to the next one. And sometimes we have to dance way back in order to dance where we left the day before, right? But that's okay, because that's part of this wonderful dance of learning. Okay, now watch. They will describe the characteristics of what? Tell me. We've done family. What do we need to do next?
People, individual people in the family.
All right, we could do of individual, family, and let's do roles. Or what were you going to say, baby? Members is fine. All right, and then we go back. So we get a strong, and then that gives us that beautiful dance back, right? We can add on more kinds of mapping here, right? We can see how these members interconnect and help one another, right? Okay, now, we haven't gotten to war, because war is real heavy. Now, somehow we've got to bring in this verb. And this is interesting, because the verb that you wanted to use was broken. This is going to be marvelous, because here comes art, here comes all kinds of stuff. What does it feel like to be broken? You know? One of my graduate students is from India, and I was telling her, I was thinking about moving back to Chicago, and she said, well, remember, she said that I've been away for 17 years. She said one of the things my mother told me, she said, is that when a glass is broken, you can put it back together again, but the line, you can always see the line. It's an interesting concept of broken. It's powerful. Okay, so we've danced back to families again. Eventually, we're going to have to get an MO that deals with the characteristics of what? Of what broken means, right? This is really something. What does it mean to feel broken, to be broken? What gets broken? Look at where you can go with that, all kinds of places. And then we've got somehow to get to the characteristics of what? War. And then we're going to have an MO up here that's going to have to put this together. And so that some families were and are broken by war. So they walk away with the concept. Now look at all the material. You can rip and tear this damn basil. You don't have any trouble doing it. You can go back to the old basil you had before and rip and tear it. You can get your skill sheets for mapping out of it. That's all I want you to focus on in this unit is mapping. That's it. All kinds of different maps. Have them redo them and do them together. They're done on butcher paper. They're done on paper they have so that they can keep them. They're working in groups. They're working in partners. They're charting. They're going to the, they have to go look up old families. How did old families handle things? They got to find people that they're elders. What does Shermansky say in his article about the influence of teachers. Did you know what Chernetsky said? He said that the richest, supposedly most powerful, most insulated, most cared for human beings in this racist white society. Rich, young, white males have had a 300% increase in suicide. Now, why are these babies killing themselves? Well, Chernetsky says because the elders have forgotten who they are. See, in this culture, you don't want to be old. You want to stay young, look young, be young. Well, I'm an elder, honey. That's what I am. I'm a 42-year-old elder, and I've earned the right to be one, and I am very proud to be one. And any opportunity that I get to influence a child in a way that I have learned is helpful and positive, strong, I do. Because that's what I am. I'm no 22. I enjoy 22 a lot. But I am 42, and I am an elder, and I act like an elder. And I treat them like an elder. That's why they told me all that stuff. Because I told them I spend the rest of my life telling people about them and how wonderful they are. All right, now look at this. You could go through this for how long, Miss Uni?
All year.
All year long, one unit. And you could get together with a group and you could do it through 2 or 3 sixth grades so that you could compare it and talk about it together. You could design, probably get it designed within a week, because you got all this stuff in here, and you've got all these activities that have been thrown at you, and you've got this thing called strategy. Now you know what the clock map is? It moves around like what? From here to here, from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. But if it's a dance, it has to move into the basic concept, right? And out of the basic concept. Into the basic concept, right? And out of the basic concept. If it's a dance, we also have to dance what? You made me here dance where? Back. I had to dance back in order to be able to move to broken. You were smarter than I was. I hadn't thought of dancing back there. But then you have a better understanding of the basic concept. Now look. Now, a clock math equals something that I don't like to use this word, which is a unit, nor a lesson plan. I hate those kind of words because, we don't do that stuff, we teach. But I want the emphasis to be on the fact that our job is to teach big ideas. And that we only need to do maybe one big idea we really love. Our basic concept should be something we love, we have a passion for, we care about. Do you see? And we can build the skills in. We'll have the enthusiasm for it. Now the clock map is quite simple. The clock map is a what? The metaphor is a dance. It's a dance. It's a circle dance. That's what it is. It's a way that you simply organize what you're going to do. In big steps. You don't need all that little stuff. You taught long enough. And if you don't, you learn from your mistakes, which you have to say are normal, necessary, and needed. Okay, now this is very important. You want to fail. You want to make mistakes. You want to share them with your colleagues. You want to learn. Look how much you taught me. You taught me that I can't go to a powerful verb in a basic concept without first doing a whole lot of dancing back. That was something I didn't realize. So you just taught me something very important. I made a mistake. Great. Now look, if we do 1 a year with a buddy where we share and we fail and we celebrate and we focus on one major, and I think this is crucial for what you're going through now, strategy. Now, what is a strategy? And then I'll let you go to break. A strategy is a powerful, magical, and I say magical because they are magical to me, special tool. And the reason that it's powerful, special, and magical is that can be changed. We can use the word transform into ways that look, sound, feel, taste, even smell differently. Now, I've come up at this point with about 8 strategies. One is mapping. Now, mapping is a strategy because out of mapping we can do what? Charts. Charts are activities. That's all they are, they're activities. How many different charts can you teach kids to do? Huh? Hundreds of different charts you can teach them. Are there some charts that are more effective for certain content areas than others? Yes. Do you know that? Yes, because you're smart. Okay? What else is a form of mapping?
Graphs.
Graphs. Thank you. Ooh, 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 ooh. You're getting it. All right? Another form of mapping might be think links, which I'm sure you've seen. Another form of mapping might be what? Timelines are a form of mapping. Look at this. Anyway, mapping is a visual way, tool to organize info to get meaning. That's what mapping is. Because, finally, and I'll stop and give you a break, reading is not a process. Now, making a car at Ford is a process. Reading is not a product. Reading is a meaning making, and this is the big word, experience. We want these learners to have experiences. When you think back with your memories, you're looking back at experiences that you had. It's experiences that we remember. When we read a book that affects us in some way, we've had some kind of relationship. Rosenblatt says transaction with that book. We've experienced the characters in that book, the people. They don't even become characters, they become people. We've experienced what's happened to them. Somehow it's touched our lives in some way that's important. And that experience in some way has changed us. We've made meaning of our lives, ourselves, the world around us in different ways. That's what reading is. It's no process where you go from here to here to here to here. It's much more wonderful than that. It's this experience, and that's what we want to give them. We want them to know the joy of that experience. When I read Donald Cruise's book, Freight Train, and when I see that page where it says moving, boy, does my heart go. I mean, because the thought of being able to move like that. I think of Judith Jamison, who I saw dance before she got tragically hurt. I mean, Judith Jamison can dance like that. I mean, my heavens. I mean, I think of that, I look at those colors. You know, I remember rainbows that I saw when I lived in the Caribbean. Do you see what I'm saying? It's experiences that come back, not processes. So what we want to bring, what we want to build on, are the experiences they have. And they have all had experiences. Those mom children have had kinds of experiences you can't imagine. But they'll certainly be able to relate to that basic concept. And they come from a very developed, interesting culture. All right, so if it's meaning-making, then what we're looking at is mapping as a strategy, word analyzing as a strategy, composing as a strategy. Do you see what I'm saying? Questioning is a strategy. Because we can do all of this in so many different powerful ways. And when we have strategies that we can focus on, then we can organize all this stuff that we're constantly getting. And that was a difficulty I found when I moved from ability-based groups to heterogeneous groups, because guess who did all the organization? They did. So I didn't have to do it. So how do we do the organization? Well, that's one way that seems to have worked with my students, and they've developed tons of units about this high, heterogeneous, literature-based, multi-ethnic units that are used by master teachers all over the Bay Area. It seems to work. They go out and they teach it and they do it, and it seems to work. And I'll probably come back and share more of it with you. But I want you to have a sense that what we're doing here is different. But that difference can be wonderful, particularly if we remember why we're here. Because of the child. And as soon as we forget that we're here because of the child, we get all lost and confused. You see, I came here to share my children with you and to tell you what I've learned from them and how I've been able to teach them in a way that seems to empower them, where they do leave me happily. Now, not everybody's going to read at college level. Nobody in the world doesn't. Who knows what college level is? But we do want people who can develop into wonderful elders. And they're not going to do that if we've abused them and trained them to be helpless. And they're not going to do that if we've taught them that reading is words and not experiences. And if we've locked their experiences out. And if we have one kid, and I have many that I pray God to forgive me for, because I abused them out of ignorance. And that simply isn't even a good enough excuse. I slapped a child once. And I pray every night for forgiveness for that. Because I have abused children as a teacher. I have used my power to abuse them. And any time I put them in a situation where they can be called dumb, and they can feel ugly and bad like they're nobody, or they've got to calm me and act a certain way so I'll think they're smart, which means if they're scared a lot, then I'm abusing them out of ignorance. But then it takes time and frustration and struggle to get smart. And that's what you're in the midst of here in Beloit. You're in the midst of a lot of time that you need, and patience, and frustration, and struggle, and doubt, and risk, and fear of failure, and all of that. It all comes together in one package. But you see, if the center is that child, then we do it. We do it the best way we can. Because I look like a damn fool if I can help a kid. I don't care. That's not what matters. You got your break. Okay. You get the paper. Well, you have to go to work. What did you think? You think I was going to work this whole time? Yeah. Yes, I know. That's because you're the cabooses and you're tired. Okay, I know you're tired. So you're gonna have fun working. Pick some colors that you like out there and pass it down. Okay, you're gonna need a leader, somebody who's gonna keep it going. Whoever your leader is gets the pad and the pencil.
Okay, pass it back.
So decide who your leader is.
Somebody's got a hand on that. I'm not good at color.
Whoever your leader is also gets a stack of index cards. So decide on your leader, and your leader gets the card.
The leader isn't chosen just because she's sitting and gets all the stuff, right?
But no, I did not put it that way. All right, now.
Well, you don't want to be the... I know.
All right.
This is an anarchy, and I'm not the king or the queen. I'm a slave.
I gotta blow a whistle, they can't hear me.
Okay, now, you are gonna do a clock map.
No, it's in my meeting.
Don't do
All right, so you're gonna do, we'll do this another time. This will be wonderful. Well, let me think. Wait a minute, let me think.
building.
Shush. I have.
Would you like to come to our building and just be there?
Yep, you're gonna do a clock map, and I'm gonna give you a book to work around. And I'm gonna give you a book that you can use, okay? You get this one. I'll give you a choice if I can.
I don't know what's in that book.
No, well, it's kind of long.
Oh, there is.
Unless you wanna take a chapter from it, but we haven't done enough to be able to take a chapter from it. Now, I know I'm giving you picture books, but I don't wanna hear any stuff
Did you guys
about
read
it.
the Circle of Gold too?
Okay, so use this one.
Yes, you can use Circle of Gold if you want. I also have where the sidewalk ends. I have Charlie Pippen, I have Martin Luther King. Anybody want?
We'll take Charlie.
You want Charlie Pippen? Oh, where is it? Okay, here's Charlie Pippen. Okay, I got, where the sidewalk ends, Shel Silverstein. Anybody wants that? No, you don't get that too. Somebody read. See, here we go with greedy teachers. Greedy teachers. Okay. I've got some poems about Harriet Tubman. Anybody interested in Harriet Tubman poems? Okay, I'll give you two that you can use. I'm giving you resources. Anybody want to Harriet Tubman poems?
Oh, we gotta have Harriet Tubman.
You want Harriet?
Freedom Train.
You must have Harriet Tubman, okay. All right, fine, there's some Harriet Tubman poems. Anybody want any of these books? Let me see that I have left. You want Forever Friends? You want King? A story is a little long. You can have Amelia, Bedelia. She's a scream, shush. All right, you can have Donald Cruz's Parade.
We'll take a million.
You want Amelia, Bedelia, too?
I don't know what I'm doing. Why not?
I told you you're getting ready to make a clock map. Anybody want Parade? Okay, I'll put these up here. You come and get them. Okay. Leaders, where's your leader? I need to talk to the
We
leader.
don't have.
Right there.
Nobody will do it at this stage.
They just, have you made up your mind yet what you're gonna do? What are you going to do? You have to work as a cooperative group, so you gotta put the paper where everybody can see it. Come on. You just have, one of the first things with being a cooperative group is that everybody has to be able to see what's going on. What is your question?
I'm a leader. You said you
Oh,
want
okay, all right, I knew you were the leader. All right, did they get you to be leader? All right, leader here. Okay, leaders, listen. Leaders, your job, and you have until 3:20, is to make a simple clock map. You may use one story if you choose. You are to focus, you are to have a clock map with a basic concept, and you can use the cards or the pad to brainstorm your basic concepts. So you are to have a basic concept. You are to have 3 major objectives. So 3 MOs. And the strategy that you are working on. All right, I'm going to give you a choice because you're cabooses and you're smart. If you want to go with mapping, as we did here, you can go with mapping as a strategy. If you want to go with questioning, because you know a lot about questioning, right? You can go with questioning as a strategy. If you want to go with storytelling, different ways to retell stories or partners share stories with each other, or you turn the story into a play, or you turn it into a poem or to something else, all the ways that we can storytell. So there are many ways that we can storytell. You can use storytelling as a strategy. So that you can use those, you can use combinations, but I want you to come up with a clock map with a basic concept with 3 MOs. Now, you've got to look one more time, because you're going to need to know something that somebody asked me, which is really simple to do. Okay, wait a minute. Hand me, throw me. Thanks. So you see what I got in PE. It was always, who wants candy? Well, we had it last time. I mean, this really is the way it went. I mean, double Dutch, everything went that way, even double Dutch. And that was very famous for my culture. Because double in 2 ways. You've got the name of the student. You can make diddles with this. So student. Here you've got unit, whatever unit you're teaching, the particular date that this is, and whatever your focus in terms of strategies or whatever it is. Then here you have your skills. And you should have no more than 4 or 5. Now, you keep these because you need this collection when these parents and administrators come up asking you what have you been doing. So you have your unit, your date, and you have your focus. Now looking at the map that we just finished doing there, what is one skill that we could pull out of there that we would want, that we would check a student in the first lesson in terms of being able to do?
Describing characteristics of the family.
All right, so orally or writtenly?
In 6th grade, probably written.
Okay, can you written description of any family?
Their family.
Okay, of own family. All right, fine. All right, give me another one. From MO1. Because MO1's going to go on for weeks and weeks. So you're going to have lots of skills you're going to be throwing in there. Hit vocabulary.
Analyzing words
How?
with the magnifying glass.
Cute. For what?
Base words.
Base words? Okay.
Only in New York would say that.
Now you're going to pull your base words out of the unit in the books they read, right? Okay, so that's nice. Okay, give me another one.
We'll be able to sequence part of the story.
Sequence, X part of story. Give me another one.
We'll be able to construct a timeline.
Okay, make a timeline. Okay, that's it. All right, now, you can use something like a system from 1 to 5. Sometimes with my students, I say you can use 1 to 5, 1 to 3. They need practice, which helps you put them in those skill groups. 4 to 5, they seem okay, they can move on to something else, or maybe they need practice too, you decide. You can use an A to F system. You know, there are all kinds of systems you can use. All you need is a clipboard and this, and you make your diddle look like that. All right, that's it in terms of evaluation. That's the way you run around and evaluate. That means while they're working in these groups, you are off your what? Rear end. And you are moving around, and you are looking down and bending down like this, and listening and watching them work together. And you're looking at the students individually, because all the research shows that teacher observation is far more accurate than anything else. You got it? Okay, now you may or may not be able to come up with this, but I'm going to be going around doing this, and I'm going to leave it up so you can see it. And I want to leave you with the idea that evaluation isn't this heavy thing that you have to turn it into. It doesn't have to be that heavy. You want to teach skills? Fine. Then here are your skills. You want to evaluate the skills? Here, fine. Evaluate the skills. Run off a bunch of diddles like this, then you can decide your work and your design and the curriculum. You set your skills across here for that particular day or for that particular 40 minutes or whatever it is. The parent wants to know what their kid's been doing. You pull out your stack of stuff and you show them. Do you see what I'm saying? Now this makes you accountable, right? Right? But that's your job, to be accountable. Because who comes first? The kid comes first. Okay, get busy. You're welcome.
Do I give a marker back, or you can keep it?
I'm giving it back to you in 1 minute. I promise. Yeah. All right. I wouldn't consider throwing. If you think I can't catch, how do you know where you think I can throw?
Well, I was
What do you
wondering,
want?
no, we can't take her big idea, make a big idea.
I think that's an awful lot to do.
Little boy dealing with his father's death.
Thinks that no matter what happens, this trip is going to be very fun. If it rains, they're going to walk in it, that type of thing. This one is what to do if you're afraid to start, and it tells you different things to do.
What is that?
Oh,
Alice, can you spend a whole year teaching? I don't have enough black in my wardrobe to wear every day.
Their mother over. And I presume that's what she's thinking in mind.
Something with feelings.
What else I've heard at times?
Oh, I like that. Well, medicine,
I think the
yes,
kids think
that's
that's
a
a lot of
subject.
they don't want to be, they want to be a family.
Which is right.
They want it to be that normal, even though they don't have the father, they want to do the things they used to do. And the other parents are-
All right. And this is
Mothers fall apart.
objectives. Okay. Big ideas. Yeah.
Well, it certainly centers around
Well, I mean, we don't have to put it
Well,
together,
they're
so
gonna
we
have
could.
to.
She's got this Oregon.
Right.
This is a typical kid fear that they're not.
That's right. They hold Oregon for days,
Okay.
which was wonderful. Okay, but anyway, describe. She gets them feelings in your school.
Feelings.
Ooh.
Just a generic thing, but anyway, we get points. Anyway, you get points, and if you're the winner, you get to go to the.
If you're afraid of the dark.
Okay, so, and this is like schools, and so many kids are getting, 9 kids out of high school are getting to go to Disneyland. They give them points, and the points are taken away already. Yeah. You can.
It's all it is.
Yeah, that's cute, and then this was about this trip where, you know, she was talking about last week, well, it just, I didn't even read the whole thing, but kids was know that no matter what, they're just gonna have a good time.
And then.
What was it, a positive outlook?
Teacher.
Well, and I don't know if this one, they're giving a, like a positive outlook into this.
Where'd you print that one?
She's signing the part and they don't want to do it.
Feelings
They're
so
real.
change.
Give them to the fish that want it.
Or another group. Send one.
We all have your group, because you're all members of your group, you know that that's the basic concept?
That's right, that's right, that's right. That group went to the
Students describe. They just, no. Yeah. We wanted some reinforcement. Students describe feelings of character. Students, okay. We wanted something about the.
You might need to read a book aloud. Poem, you might need to read something aloud.
Students describe events can create feelings.
Oh, describe. Are we using, keep using describe? How
You always get pictures.
events.
Wait, we got pause, short list, got lots of pictures.
Right through all this stuff. We'll just tell them. We have a lot of girl talk to do.
It does, but
No boys, no men.
about life and about obligation and all that sort of thing is very much affected by all this. And Charlie thinks he thinks, yeah. Charlie's been
Yeah.
Get pictures.
These are main objectives.
big idea.
How about something, strengths within companion?
That make her feel.
And for her strength to continue on, is also going to be that older woman. Students really speak with her. Do we call her strength or something, you know, strength within numbers?
Well, I think with the security thing,
We have to get to change. If we're gonna go all the way around the clock. We've dealt with feelings, how events cause the feelings,
Companionship builds.
characters, how characters change their characters.
well, she had a way to solve her problem. Her father was kind of, you know, thought this would take care of her feelings.
Coping is a good word. She ends up stealing away to.
Right.
And that part would go out and becomes
To the read, I don't know.
She wants to go as part of.
And this one, they didn't get any problems because they just.
Tell it to me again, guys.
Right side.
Describe about your quote. Strategy.
As a
Oh,
case.
students describe how
And this one, she figures that she can solve the entire problem with this. And in essence, she did. And it had nothing to do really with buying this, but the fact that her mother finally realized what the problem was and, you know, and she resolved it herself. So there was a lack of communication there.
Oh, that's true.
Well, actually, they don't all have to fit into it, we just need an idea for this. And if all these books don't fit, that's fine.
Interdependence is important.
Okay,
Keep it on the sixth grade level.
Independence and success. I don't know if this one goes so much with success as to.
Yeah, because that was even open.
Success is okay, feeling okay about it.
That's great.
That's what happens, right?
Get your state of life.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably involved, but I think that maybe tremendous part of the experience of children, the fact that she needs to feel accepted by her mother and would like her family back to normal.
We have to have a strategy. What are we going to use? The strategy of math, questioning, or storytelling?
And her grandmother
Which
was the
one with the most options.
kind of takes, who snatches her away from the stories, and they tell the stories.
Different ways to retell the story.
Grandma's the one who was.
But I suppose
know
maybe
that they would like read a story and then change it.
tell the story. Tell the story. How many different ways can we tell the story?
It's German thing.
We could read it orally to someone. We could,
Something really important as well, because there seems to be love and.
we could set it to music and make it a song.
In some ways, it's because.
Do strictly illustrations, which this is
Hard wrenching. And the sister is more acquiescent.
She takes a risk too.
Yeah.
So is that our strategy?
Well, he takes a risk.
Jan, you're the expert now.
To make it communication. And it's a risk.
But that doesn't necessarily have to be our strategy.
Well, she thinks the mother goes in more than
So that's
her, which is part of the problem.
He gets an, he gets
And
an.
that being, okay, that
Okay, so you gotta have three,
you know what kinds of stories are there and.
All right, let's get the idea of it first. We got feelings, love, communication. Do we have any other idea to make into a
Those are
sentence?
just words, they're sentences.
Well, yeah, but we'll make them all into a sentence, but are there more? Are there more?
Companionship.
Okay, well, compare and wait a minute now, this has to say, let's see, animals are what? Major objectives, key, what? Experience.
Because remember, when you pick it, it's going to have to fit into a lot of different books. You have to fit it, if you can fit it into science and social studies, it would be the best. That it will fit into all subject areas as well as the
The
reading.
question is,
Yeah, I would go with humanity.
Well, that's why our big idea should be able to go across.
which one do you want to go first? Well, can't we, well, wait a minute,
Okay,
can't we just put down, and then we can make it clear, we can say, Sienna,
We'll see.
number one,
What you're going to talk, like teachers.
That's your assignment.
Because of the relationship with her mother, her father, and with the, that lady. And her parents.
Because we got this.
Also the racial.
Okay, I think relationship might be the one that.
Okay, 20 minutes.
Because I'm.
Okay.
Relationships work with every subject. I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
steps underneath.
Yeah.
Well, then you're limiting it to classes where we can say.
All regions.
Okay, is this
Seriously. Poems on feeling.
Yeah.
His feelings didn't change in that story though.
Oh, yes, they did. Reconcile. I just read it. We just read it. It's your you.
create We could do a, we could, character,
Yeah.
character.
But he accepts.
Just highlight one.
No, we could write a biographical sketch. Even though
Yes.
the character isn't real.
Denial to
Yeah, you
acceptance.
can, but you want to start off simple. So you can do a character.
Oh, we're together with the caboose now.
So you do a character what? Character trait, character description.
Character description.
Okay, character description. Or chart.
Probably be better
Or
than church.
chart.
Yes, but it's little ones.
Right, so we never see
So
it.
we don't get it. I think they are reading Rainbow for us.
Well, yeah,
She
she
has
has
to
to.
create a program.
You know, once we use cover to cover, the movies stay the same as she did. So,
They used to use it in fifth grade.
That's the end result.
Okay, so yeah, I just love it. I do too.
Characters, you want to
309.
Yes. Is there anything else here that?
I like
Okay, so if the timeline was goodbye, it would look a little bit like, you know, his five
Yes,
steps.
I agree. That's what I find.
Is it when you
Here's the 5 steps at the beginning.
And one of those middle ones, and then the other two, but then they look to pull this one in, and get the song, and they sing.
Or sometimes they.
Well, where are you?
You know,
You got your
but it's
basic
kind of
concepts
flying around, but they're.
Okay, then you put a thing in the center here and write your basic concept document. Now I just transfer it to here.
And they're only on one side of it rather than the other side.
Of the cards, in case you wanted to put ideas on there, but you don't need it if you don't mind. Obviously. Okay, so here are all kinds of colors that you can use. Alright, here's the purple, that's a bit of purple.
Let's get
Yeah, you want to list specific math, whether you use charts or diagrams or timelines or what? Or you can just list that right under the MO. So it could be as simple as teacher models, blank, teacher models chart, character analysis chart, students work in pairs and do charts, students share, charts are displayed.
What do you do that when you do that? When
You
you
see, boom, boom, boom. It's real simple, it's repetitious.
could you do that?
And actually, we could probably stop.
And then you put then you put a circle around that, and go out with your first MO.
Giving it an open-ended meaning. No, I know, but perfect, Amelia.
No matter what.
Okay, you got your basic concept? Now what is it?
Hallelujah. Relationships.
I don't remember his name.
Somebody put it in the center, in the middle of the box, and after that, somebody put something else.
You picked the worst artist for the whole picture.
Only a circle.
No, it isn't. That is, if you're in a relationship, it's a chart. We're doing a grant, we're doing a art.
Okay. Yeah, now, I like the chart. So, you would not say the garbage. Characteristics of relationships, really simple.
Describe.
So a relationship, what is
So the
that?
students
There's lots
know
of different
that what you might
relationships, so
want
that's
the
a really.
students to be able to transform the
Okay, and we'll describe the
information that they
characteristics
learn
of
from
it.
the chart into bar graphs. They may want something like that.
We want to describe just what she said.
Put things here and.
Like this, like this. We wanted to describe each one of the characters in the stories took a risk.
All right.
Especially Charlie.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Relationships,
Okay,
no,
all
the
right.
characteristics.
Then you put it in your MO. So then you want students to be able to identify
Okay, that's it. Identify.
and refer each character's risk
And that's so recent too, that I do.
And
Degree of risk.
And you know, we've got two in our room that have lost mothers.
and display in the park.
We could use
grass
with growth
They
pains.
want to
You
try
got it,
that.
that makes sense?
Stacy
See
does
how
too.
the birds boom, boom, boom,
Well, see, the thing is that growth is one that needs to be defined, because
Oh,
that's why
I'm
we use
sorry,
it.
all right.
It's something that we should, that should be one of these also.
You're absolutely right, you're right.
As being,
You're right.
because you're looking at a concept that,
That's right, you're right.
and like you say, I mean, it could be across the bridge.
This is right.
But
That's it. And then one, you go through the same thing there. And then you might, and you have to model, they're gonna be charts. So they use the charts. Good, thanks.
Describing characteristics of growth.
Source the chart, like this way, teacher models risk.
Role play.
Degree of risk. This graph, in other words, how to
Role play.
This is, no, this is different.
that's all done around.
Teacher models.
Aren't they amazing?
Right.
Something she did not know.
Right. I did that with my kids too. They were so funny. Juvenile and toxic women.
Okay, you got your 3 MOs? Okay, label them as MO, please. And then under each, you got a list, what you're specifically gonna do. Like, are they gonna, which strategy are you focusing on?
Mapping.
Mapping, okay, then you've got a list, if they're gonna describe feelings and care, then what kind of mapping are you gonna use here? What kind of mapping are you gonna use here? How are they gonna connect these two? What kind of mapping are you gonna use here?
Okay, this is time.
I see now, I just not sure why you
We'll
wanted to
describe situation.
keep it only one. They said, well, we could go.
Now they're adding more to
Several, but I understand, you wanted to go like you're saying, dance in and out, show them different.
Now, wait, all right, how about
And
comparing?
then we got that one missing going for
You
that.
got it, you got it. You wanna give them a strategy as a tool,
I shall
a powerful tool. That's right, like you learn how to use a hammer, how do you learn? You learn how to use a hammer in a lot of different ways, right? Yeah, that's how they get it.
Have
They then have to apply that to this.
how the descriptions will take place.
And what you would do is, you can't talk about it, it just doesn't. Students in
I think that's a nice way, and it saves them writing.
That's fine. Okay, now what are you using as your source material?
Teacher models.
This is the primary.
You're using circle gold?
This is the primary.
Okay.
This one would kind of work as a class group.
Okay, then, what you need to list, one, you need to write MO by each of these, so that you know that those are
Any
your
variant
MOs.
unusual.
Right, so you want to identify your MO. Then under these, what is the strategy that you're gonna be using throughout this entire app? Which strategy?
Unusual ideas that you can't.
Now, you can, like, if you use one here, you can do the same one.
Because
I want you to use the same strategy, I want you to think.
Oh, so the strategy is maybe something like.
Right, now you apply, so if you use mapping, then they might do charts here, or diagrams here, or timelines there, or, and, all right, or they might do maps here, diagrams here, and then put it together, get some form of a chart here,
As a
see what I'm
concept,
saying?
sure, you've got, you know, the
So
feeling.
you might use a relationship map here, or a semantic map where they have words that describe, where they cluster, they do the group label bit, that's what you want to do, you want to list through there. Teacher models, boom, learner does this, and you don't want to decide if it's going to be in pairs, or small group, or alone. And then they've got to share.
Then they will.
Yeah.
Take the story and write it.
Students
Yeah.
will.
But that's storytelling, right? So
Instructions Margaret, before or after you do the degree.
Let's toy with the questions. That's supposed to wait for time.
And they put them together, they peer teach, you put them together to peer teach, they can be interviewed.
In order to construct a graph, they get on a digital graph, say, construct a graph, they can't do it. They can't do that. But still, they can't.
a lot different.
So they don't, but they need a lot of time to do
What I'm
Looking
doing
at
is order
questions,
here.
it's also.
Yes, yes.
Yes, you can use questions as a strategy.
Well, you can just make a list of strategies, right? You do like what you did up there, you just make the statement and then
Right.
list a lot of different things.
Then they're gonna
Yeah,
construct the bar graph, not on degree of, on maybe on what they found out on interviewing.
So learn.
Because here comes we're talking about what is risk at this point. Or you could do chart making here.
If you're gonna focus on one book here, and then pull in the other book.
Let me read this, okay?
If we look at this as an MO,
What would you
because
have?
essentially, if we just focus in here on circle of
What
goals,
two circles
or
are?
let's say for instance, or it depends on which one you want to focus on, that one's simple. Depends. Do you know this, does everybody know that story? Okay, then we'll use this one. All right, if we just focus in on circle of goals, then you can say, if you go to the question, that's a strategy, and that's a question. All right, that's when you